At 3:47 p.m. on a random Tuesday, my phone lit up. One notification, one name I hadn't seen in 8 months. James, my father. Family dinner tonight, 7 o'clock p.m. sharp. Important discussion. Don't be late. I stared at the screen, a cold smile forming the kind that shows up when you already know the ending. 8 months ago, I stood on my graduation stage alone, scanning the crowd, row after row, empty. They were busy that day, too busy to watch their daughter graduate, but suddenly, tonight was important. I didn't reply. I grabbed my keys, because I knew exactly why they were calling me now. Before I tell you what I brought to that dinner, comment below and tell me, what's the longest you've ever gone without speaking to a family member? Because silence doesn't just hurt, it gets loud. I didn't drive my own car. Pulling up in a luxury SUV would have been a mistake. It would announce my success before I was ready to use it. So I rented something forgettable, grey, mid-range, invisible. Perfect camouflage. As I drove toward the estate, the sun dipped behind the hills, bathing the valley in gold. From a distance, it looked perfect. Old money, tradition, stability. But up close, the paint on the gates was peeling. Rust bled through the iron. The driveway crumbled where gravel used to be. And the vineyard, the leaves were brittle. The vines stunted. This wasn't bad luck. This was neglect. The truth hit me hard and clear. My father didn't invite me back because he missed me. He invited me back because he needed something. I parked far from the other cars and checked my reflection. No makeup, no jewelry, no armor. I wasn't a daughter coming home for approval anymore. I was a CEO walking into a hostile negotiation. And right then, for the first time all day, the knot in my stomach loosened. Because I finally understood, this dinner wasn't about my past. It was about their future. For most of my life, I judged my family through emotion, love, rejection, hurt, hope. That was my mistake. They never operated on emotion. They operated on return on investment. To them, I was a loyal asset. Quiet, focused, self-sufficient. I didn't generate attention the way my beauty queen sister Olivia did. I didn't charm rooms like my brother Joshua. I brought no social leverage, no quick payoff. So they stopped investing. It wasn't cruelty. It wasn't hatred. It was business, cold, efficient, dismissive. They walked away because they couldn't see my upside. But markets change. The asset they wrote off had appreciated far beyond their imagination, and their own portfolio was collapsing. Now they wanted back in. Desperate investors chasing an opportunity after the IPO. Understanding this didn't erase, but it gave me something better. Armor. This wasn't a family reunion. It was a negotiation, and they were already operating from a position of weakness. Leather portfolio in hand, I stepped into the cooling evening air and walked toward the house. I didn't knock. I walked in. The dining room smelled like expensive roast beef and outdated ambition. My mother, Angela, rushed toward me with open arms, as if she hadn't spent 8 months pretending I didn't exist. "Jasmine, look at you," she said brightly. "We've missed you so much." The hug was light, quick, designed for an audience that wasn't there. I didn't return it. I let her pull back on her own. "You look tired," Olivia said, swirling her wine. "That hotel job must really be running you down." Classic Olivia. A smile sharpened into a blade. She needed me to be struggling, because if I wasn't, then her own collapsing influencer career had nowhere to hide. "Something like that," I said, taking my seat. I didn't correct her. I didn't mention the international awards my resorts had just won, or the magazine cover waiting next month. I let them keep their illusions just a little longer. The table was set with the good china, the kind reserved for donors and politicians. My father sat at the head, every inch the gracious patriarch, though I noticed the fraying cuffs at his wrists. He raised his glass. "To family, to being together again." Crystal touched crystal. The sound rang hollow. As I sipped my water, my mother launched into a speech about an upcoming charity gala, carefully avoiding a single question about my life. "We really missed you," she added, almost absent-mindedly. I glanced at the empty chair beside me, but it wasn't empty. I saw my 22-year-old self sitting there, cap and gown still on, phone in hand, checking it every 30 seconds in a crowded auditorium, waiting for a message that never came. "We're here." I remembered walking across that stage to applause from strangers, knowing my family was celebrating something more important. My brother's new truck. That younger version of me looked up now, eyes red, hopeful, aching. She still wanted their love, and for the first time that night, I realized exactly what I owed her. She just wanted to be enough. The realization hit me so hard it stole my breath. I wasn't here to earn their approval. I was here to protect her, to make sure that girl never had to beg for scraps again. I set my glass down deliberately. The soft click cut straight through my mother's chatter. Dad, I said evenly, your message said this was urgent. Let's skip the performance. Why am I really here? The room changed instantly. James leaned back, leather groaning beneath him, not nervous, not ashamed, entitled. That was his gift, standing on a sinking ship while still expecting a salute. We have a situation, he said, swirling his wine. A temporary liquidity problem. The drought hit the valley. Production is down. The bank is being difficult. He paused, waiting for concern. I gave him nothing. He cleared his throat. There is a solution. The Silver Creek estate is being auctioned specifically, their water rights. If we secure them, we secure the future. Irrigation, expansion, regional dominance. And we need capital, Uncle Robert cut in smoothly. To move quickly, we'll need $1 million. Liquid, immediately. They said it casually, like asking for salt. This wasn't a loan. It was a tribute. We know you've done well with your little hotels. My father continued, waving the idea away. It's time you contributed to a legacy that actually matters. This vineyard has lasted 3 generations. It's your duty to ensure a 4th. Duty, I repeated. The word tasted like ash. Don't act surprised, Olivia said, smirking as she picked at her salad. You didn't build that success alone. You had Dad's instincts. The family name, the connections. You owe us. Exactly, Robert added, leaning closer. Good stock produces returns. Your success is simply dividends. It's time those returns came home. I scanned the table. No one was asking. They were collecting. They genuinely believed my sleepless nights, my risks, my grind. Building an eco-resort empire from nothing belonged to them. They dismissed my business as a hobby while demanding it rescue their collapsing legacy. Then my eyes landed on the center of the table. The wine, dark, dusty, unopened. I'd placed it there when I arrived. Not one of them had checked the label. If they had, the blood would have drained from their faces. But they were too busy counting my money to notice the warning sitting between them. So, James said, folding his hands, we need the transfer started by tomorrow morning. The auction technically closed 2 days ago, but the winner hasn't been announced. We'll make a cut and pressure them out. Robert added. Pressure, I echoed quietly. That's the plan. It's business, my father said, smiling down at me. You play hard or you lose. You'll learn. I nodded slowly. I see. Then I said the words they weren't expecting. You're right. Business is business. I reached for my leather portfolio, not my checkbook. The truth, I dabbed my mouth with my napkin, even though I hadn't eaten, and placed it carefully on the table. The fabric settled softly, the sound oddly loud in the sudden silence. The zipper hissed as I opened the portfolio, like a blade sliding free. You're absolutely right, I said, my voice calm, empty of emotion. In business, before investing a single dollar, I looked up. You conduct due diligence. So I did. The first file slid across the polished mahogany toward Uncle Robert. He glanced down, and his smile collapsed. The documents were a forensic audit. 5 years of his financial decisions, laid bare. You said the bank was being unreasonable, I said calmly, flattening the page with my palm. But according to these filings, they've been remarkably patient. Robert's hands began to shake. You've leveraged this estate 3 separate times, I continued, to cover failed cryptocurrency bets and offshore gambling losses. I met his eyes. You're not illiquid, Robert. You're insolvent. That's private, he stammered, lunging to cover the papers. Where did you even get this? Public records, I said, and a very good private investigator. I didn't slow down. You don't need $1 million for water rights. You need it to cover the balloon payment on the second mortgage you quietly took out. My father snapped his head toward his brother. I didn't give them time to fight. I wasn't finished. The second stack landed on the table. Heavy, glossy, intentional, high-definition brochures and bound financial reports placed directly over the untouched appetizers. And about my little hotel job, I said, turning to Olivia. I think there's been some confusion. I opened the brochure. A sweeping aerial shot filled the page. A cliffside resort in Bali, carved into jungle and stone. The logo shimmered in embossed gold. The Jasmine Collective. I don't work for a hotel chain, I said evenly. I own it. 12 luxury for continents. Ultra-high net worth clientele. Sustainable, private, I slid the valuation report toward my father. His eyes dropped to the final number, and widened. Last quarter, I said, the company was valued at $56.5 million. The room stopped breathing. I didn't get there because of your name, I added. In fact, I built everything under a shell company specifically so my brand would never be associated with your declining reputation. The silence wasn't just quiet, it was a vacuum. Joshua stared at me like the world had tilted sideways. Olivia's mouth hung open as she stared at the brochure, realizing the hobby she mocked was an empire. She could never afford to step inside. I closed the portfolio. So no, I said, I won't be investing in this vineyard. I met my father's eyes. Not because I can't afford it, but because I don't invest in sinking ships, and I certainly don't pay dividends to people who taught me nothing except how to survive neglect. Wait, James said quickly. The arrogance was gone now. What remained was fear. Jasmine, think about this. 56 million, 1 million is nothing to you. Pocket change. This land is our legacy. If we don't get those water rights, the vines die. He swallowed. The family dies with it. I know, I said. That's why I didn't come here to invest. I reached for the bottle of wine sitting untouched in the center of the table, the one I had brought, the one no one bothered to notice. I lifted it and held it out to my father. Read the label, Dad. He took it, confused, squinted at the elegant script. Silver Creek Estate, Reserve Cabernet minus 2018. He frowned and looked up. I don't understand. This is from next door. Why are you showing me this? Keep reading, I said softly. Look at the bottom. The proprietor. He leaned closer. His breath caught. The bottle slipped from his fingers and struck the table with a dull thud. It didn't break. He did. Proprietor. Jasmine, he whispered. I didn't come here to help you bid on Silver Creek, I said, my voice cutting clean through the room. I bought it. Silence. 2 days ago, I continued. 41 million. Cash. Angela gasped, clutching at her necklace. You own it. I own the land, I said. The vines, the infrastructure. I met my father's eyes. And yes, the senior water rights for this entire valley. The room tilted. The auction you planned to bully your way into, I added, it never happened. I made a preemptive offer they couldn't refuse. That's when it hit them. I wasn't a successful daughter they could pressure. I was their neighbor, their competition, and I controlled the only resource keeping them alive. Why? Olivia asked, her voice sharp with panic. Why would you buy that place? I turned to her. Do you remember where I wanted my graduation party, Olivia? She blinked. What? 8 years ago, I said calmly. I begged Mum and Dad to let me have a small party at the Silver Creek barn. It was simple. It was beautiful. I leaned forward. And you said it was too expensive for a party nobody would attend. You said we couldn't waste money on my moment. I straightened. I bought it because I could. And because now, I own the place where you refused to celebrate me. I paused. I owned the memory you tried to erase. The air felt thin. They weren't looking at a family member anymore. They were staring at the landlord of their fate. So, James said, his voice cracking. The patriarch was gone. What stood in his place was a frightened man in a tailored suit. You control the water. Then we can figure this out. An easement, a family rate. We'll pay you back, please. Angela stepped forward, tears finally real now. Fear had stripped the performance away. We made mistakes, she said. But you can't let the vineyard die. It's your home. I looked at them huddled together inside the ruins of their entitlement. They still thought this was a negotiation, that there was a number high enough to buy my obedience. I zipped my portfolio shut. I'm afraid that doesn't align with my business model. I met my father's eyes one last time. The Jasmine Collective is built on sustainability. My plan for Silver Creek isn't agriculture, I said. It's restoration. I zipped the portfolio closed. I'm restoring the stream, removing the dams, letting the water return to the ecosystem it was stolen from. Joshua went pale. But if you don't divert the water to us, he stammered, the vines will dry out within a month. Yes, I said simply. They will. You're destroying us, Robert shouted, slamming his hand on the table. You're bankrupting your own blood. No, I corrected, turning toward the door. I'm just declining to subsidize a failing business. I paused. You taught me that, Dad. Never throw good money after bad. I glanced back once, and frankly, your vineyard is a terrible investment. I walked out. Behind me, the room exploded, my father yelling, Olivia sobbing, my mother calling my name. It sounded like chaos trapped inside a cathedral. I passed the portraits in the foyer, generations of people who would have been ashamed of what their descendants had become, and opened the heavy oak door. The night air was cool, clean. I got into the rental car and started the engine. As I drove down the long broken driveway, my phone lit up on the passenger seat. Dad calling, Mom calling, texts from Olivia, a message from Robert. We can sue. I didn't block them. I just turned the phone face down. I waited for the rush. for the victory high, for the moment I'd imagined for years. It never came. As I merged onto the highway, the dying vineyard shrinking in my mirror, I felt nothing, and that was the greatest luxury of all. Hate takes energy. It requires you to care about the people who hurt you. I didn't hate them anymore. I had reached the altitude of indifference. They weren't villains. They weren't obstacles. They were just people, small, careless, bad at business, who used to know me. I rolled the window down and let the wind fill the car. I was driving toward my new estate, toward water I owned, toward a future I built with my own hands. The silence wasn't lonely anymore. It was peaceful. And if you've ever had to outgrow people who were supposed to grow with you, share this story and hit subscribe. Because next time we're talking about what happens when they try to come crawling back.